So in a recent tech conversation with one of my client teams, they asked me this question about when and where would I use a conditional layout. Now, the idea of a conditional layout is to rely on a condition at runtime to automatically switch between one or more layouts, right? And then the classic places where you would use that is in case of responsive design, where you could use the screen size to determine whether I should be in a certain layout or not. Now, a typical way in which this is handled in Flutter is to use a layout builder, but then you'll have to kind of bake in the code to manually manage the layouts as you switch between different viewport sizes, right? And that could be a very manual exercise. So sometimes one particular layout is good enough and it can take care of all the viewport sizes. But sometimes you have very varying needs in terms of what you want to show at a particular place. Well, here's an example where you can see this particular layout where I'm showing you a page view for the different cards over here. And when you're in the small viewport of this kind, you want to see this page view. But as you go into larger viewports, you probably want to switch to a carousel because you want to be more wider, and that's why you occupy more width on here, right? And so that's why you switch to a carousel over here. And if you grow into even larger viewports, you may want to switch to a grid, a 3-column grid in this case, right? Which makes more sense for this larger viewport. Now, doing this in any other server-driven UI framework is pretty challenging. In fact, almost next to impossible in some cases. Whereas here, in case of Vyuh, this is pretty straightforward. Now, this particular component actually comes from the body group, which is kind of showing you the 7 items over here. And notice that the layout for this group is a conditional layout. And it has been set to different types depending on the case that you're in. So the current screen size is what we're looking at as our condition. And the current screen size tells you whether you are a small, medium, large, or X large, which can of course be configured using a breakpoint service inside your app. But for small, we are going with a page view, which is what you saw a little earlier, right? So if I come down over here, you will see it jumps to a page view. Now what we could do is we can even change this. So for example, I can go here and say I want to use a grid which has, let's say, 2 columns is fine. But in fact, you can even do 1 column, right? And make this as the primary item. So now, when you're in the small viewport, you would switch to a single column view, which is kind of nice, right? Which makes sense in some cases, but I wanted to kind of go with a page view. So let me switch to page view, right? So I have a page view. And when I go to a medium viewport, I have a carousel, which is exactly what you saw here. So medium is when you're in like a tablet viewport, right? So here you will see you're switching to a carousel. And if you go even bigger, obviously you're going to go to a grid view. So I think when you go to the large viewport, the columns are 3. And when you go to X large, the columns are 4. So if I stretch this even more, you will see it'll switch to a 4-column layout at some point, which is what happens over here. Right? So doing this, changes between different viewports and adjusting the layouts dynamically is pretty easy if you have a conditional layout in place. And notice that I do all of this with the conditional layout, which is set on the group itself, and it takes care of switching between different layouts based on the different breakpoints. Right, so this is a classic example where conditional layouts could be really useful. In some of the places where conditional layouts could be used is when you want to show different types of offers, campaigns, promotions for your different users, and you want to do that based on the current logged in user, right, or based on the past purchase behavior of the customer. You could also use conditional layouts when you are switching between entirely 2 different types of pages. Right, you could have a basic page and you could have a premium page, and the layouts of those pages could be controlled through a condition. And note that the conditional layout, although we are showing you right now for the group, in this case, this can also apply straight up to the routes itself, the entire page, which renders the screen that you see in front of you right now. So conditional layouts are a very powerful concept and gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of trying out different layouts and adjusting the layout as per runtime conditions. And in this case, the responsive behavior that you typically see in web-based applications is a classic use case for using conditional layouts.